A brush stroke here or there can add punch to a plain background or spice up a photo or page. While brushes are often used as painting tools in Photoshop Elements, where you drag a brush to paint a stroke across the page, you can also use them like digital rubber stamps. Click the brush once and leave a single shape. We're going to start by opening a new Photoshop document. In the menu bar, choose File, New, Blank File. That's File, New, Blank File. I'm going to name this My Background, and I'm going to set the dimensions to 12 inches by 12 inches at 300 pixels per inch. And I'm going to leave the defaults for the rest. Click OK. And here's my new document. Now the first thing I'm going to do is save this. I'll click File, Save As. That's File, Save As. And because I named my document when I created it, Photoshop Elements assumes that that is the name I want to use as my file name, which it is. So I'll click Save here. Now I have my mybackground.psd file saved. You didn't really have to do that step, but it's not a bad idea to save your file when you create it, and then continue to save periodically throughout your design process. Now let's go ahead and enlarge this so that we are using all of the screen real estate available to us. In the menu bar, choose View, Fit on Screen. That's View, Fit on Screen. Now I'm ready to add a solid background to my new document. I'm going to open the Color Swatches palette to select a color. In the menu bar, choose Window, Color Swatches. That's Window, Color Swatches. Now we need to load the foreground color box with the color that we want to use for our background, because that is the color the paint bucket will use. I'm going to choose Cool Dark Brown, or Dark Cool Brown. And notice in the toolbox that the foreground color has now changed to that color. Also in the toolbox, select the Paint Bucket tool. Position your pointer anywhere over your document, click your left mouse button, and Photoshop Elements will fill your document with this new background color. Now I'm ready to start adding some decorative elements using the brushes. I'm going to add a new layer first. So in the Layers palette, click the New Layer button at the top of the Layers palette. This will create a new blank layer in your document. Why add a new layer? You could use brushes directly on your background and have everything on a single layer. But what if you decide you want to change a brush's color or position or even size as your background develops? It's much easier to make size adjustments, rotations, or color changes if each brush is on its own layer. Now select a coordinating color from the Color Swatches palette. I'm going to choose white, which goes with everything. Then, in the toolbox, select the Brush tool. Now, in the Options bar, click the down arrow to open the Brush Presets pop-up. Now, my brush sets already shows AASP_Sunnyside, the brush set that we loaded, because it was the last one that I used. I'm going to use the very first brush here at the top left of the palette. It's Sunnyside 1. Click the brush and then click the down arrow again or the X here to close this palette. Now hover your pointer anywhere inside your document window and you should see an outline of your brush. This will show you roughly what your brush will look like. It will be this size and it will take this shape. Then click once along the left side here. It doesn't really matter where. You're going to use your own design aesthetic to create this background. I'm going to click mine here. And there it is. You've just added a decorative element and created a simple background. Wasn't that easy? Now before we go much further, let's go ahead and rename these two layers and name our layers as we continue. That'll help us to, or helps me rather, to identify and organize my layers. So I'm going to call this one background and this one brush 1. And let's add a new layer for the next brush that we're going to add. And I'm going to name that one brush 2. Now, in the Color Swatches palette, select another color. I'm going to use this one, light cool brown. Then, in the Brushes pop-up palette, select another brush. I'm going to use brush 4. Let me reopen that for you so you can see it. It's this one, brush 4. And again, you can see the shape and the size of the brush. But I want to resize this brush. I want to make it smaller. In the options bar, if you look at the size box, you will notice that this brush's size is 1808 pixels. This is the size that the designer created the brush. I'm going to reduce that down to 1650 pixels. If you click this arrow, a slider will pop open, and all you have to do is drag that slider over to the left. The more you drag, the smaller the brush will become. I want mine right at about 1650 pixels. And if I hover my mouse again or my pointer over my document, I can see what my brush size looks like as I change it. So I'm just going to drag that down, and you can see that it's now a very small brush, only 331 pixels. This is 1100 pixels. I'm going to take mine back up to 1650 pixels. I'm happy with that, so I'll click this arrow, and now I'm going to click the lower right corner here, and you'll notice that I've got some of my brush bleeding off the edge. That's just a design choice on my part. You can stamp this brush anywhere you wish, but I'm going to put mine there, and there is my second brush. My background is starting to take shape, isn't it? Add a new layer and name that one brush 3. Go back to the options bar and select, this time, brush 2. It's the second brush from the left. And bring that into your document window to see what it looks like. Now, this brush seems to fit naturally at the top, doesn't it? But what if I want it to go at the bottom? What if I really want to flip this brush so that it fits at the bottom of my background? Well, that's easy to do. All you have to do is rotate the brush before you stamp. In the options bar, click the paintbrush icon to show the options for setting brush dynamics. This opens this dialog, which allows me to set a number of settings, but the one that I'm interested in is the angle. I really want to flip this 180 degrees, which I could type in here, or I could drag the arrow and drag, watching the angle change as I drag. So now my angle is 180 degrees. I can close this, and now when I position my pointer over my background, you'll notice that my brush has been flipped vertically. And I'm going to position this along the bottom edge here and click. You can stop now or continue adding brushes to your background until you're satisfied. I'm satisfied with mine the way it is. Here's some things to remember though as you add brushes to create your background. Add a new layer each time you add a brush so you can make adjustments later. After you've applied a brush to a layer, you can rotate, move, resize the layer as you've already learned. So if we wanted to adjust one of these layers, we could do that just like any other digital element. You can rearrange the brush layers by moving them up and down in the layers palette. For a more subtle touch, reduce the opacity of a brush layer. Let's do that now with brush 1. In the Layers palette, just click the down arrow next to the opacity box and drag the slider to the left to reduce the opacity. And notice in the window that the opacity of my brush changes as I adjust the slider. So that's also a nice subtle way to use brushes within your layouts or within your backgrounds. Add brushes above digital pattern backgrounds to add more visual interest to those. And for an elegant touch, layer brushes with lowered opacity over your photos. Congratulations! You've created a lovely background with just a few simple brushes. But the look is so elegant, no one would ever guess how easy it really was.